Welcome, everybody. If you were here last week, you know we alluded to a part two, which is, hey, you're here for part two. If you missed last week, the session was recorded. All the documents were shared, so we can definitely share those with you if you didn't get them, or if you're looking for, more information on this topic. Last week's session, super informative. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're back again this week, you must have enjoyed a little bit. So this week we are going to be talking about reactive maintenance. Last week was more proactive things. This week is, what happens when something goes wrong that you're not expecting. We've got Curtis back again from our training team to go through this presentation. If you are, needing to leave halfway through, if you get distracted, no worries. This is being recorded. We'll send a recording out. Please ask any questions you have throughout the presentation. Use the Q&A function to ask those questions. If you ask them in the chat, we might miss them. They might get covered up by other comments and stuff. So use the Q&A function within the chat. You'll just see it in there as one of the options. And ask any questions, all questions, any questions that pop into your head. No question is a question you shouldn't ask. If there's anything that you think of, we will be happy to answer all those questions. I'll be answering questions as we go throughout this presentation today. I'll answer as many as I can. Any questions that I don't get to, or maybe I'm unsure of them, or there's other resources that I want to share along with the answer, we'll try to do some live Q&A at the end, but anything that we don't get to today, we'll follow up with the document. If you were in last week's session, we'll send that out and we'll get all those questions answered. So ask away, ask as many questions as you want. There's no limit to that. And like I said, if you have coworkers that are stuck, unable to attend, they don't need to rush to other meetings. This is being recorded, so we can share it with them. Or if you watch it and know that other people benefit from this, share it with them. Let them learn what you've learned today. So without any further ado, let's welcome Curtis onto the stage.
Good morning, everyone, from sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, wherever you're at. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It is my pleasure to kick off our session on MyGeotab reactive maintenance features. My name is Curtis Cravy. I'm a senior training specialist here at Geotab, and I want to get right into it today. So just as a recap of our session last week, in the last session, we did cover why proactive maintenance is important, maintenance feature updates, creating maintenance schedules, and working through those through the work order management process. So that was more of the proactive side last week. As Ishi alluded to, if you did not have an opportunity to attend last week's session, please feel free to check out the recording of last week's session. That may give you some more insight as to everything we're discussing about with maintenance features in Geotab. This session is going to be more about the reactive side. So in this session, we're going to talk about understanding fault reports, the maintenance feature updates we've made recently to the asset page, recording unplanned maintenance events, defining your maintenance defects lists, and finally, running maintenance reports. So there's a lot to cover today, and I want to get right into it. So that being said, let's talk about why we need to talk about reactive maintenance when we just spent last week talking about being proactive so we don't have to worry about the reactive stuff as much. It's really because no matter how proactive we get and as many predictive maintenance features we enable, things still happen, right? And chances are most of you have had to deal with at least a flat tire. There's no reminder to say, by the way, in 3 weeks, you're going to get a flat tire. That would be great if I had some precursor information, but it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you're just driving or starting up the vehicle for the first time that day, and you're like, that doesn't sound quite right. Or perhaps that dreaded check engine light pops on. We've all been there. We've all seen these things. And no matter what we do, things will always occur. So in those cases, we want to make sure we're discussing how we can be more effective with our database structures and the tools available to us to record these events and get these things moving and reacting to them quickly. Because as we discussed in the last session, things aren't getting any cheaper. And if we let things go on with any type of issues with our vehicles, they will become typically more costly. So we want to be able to enable you to react quickly on any of these aspects. So the first type of aspect I want to discuss is checking maintenance faults reports. Even properly maintained vehicles and equipment may report issues. So it doesn't matter. You're doing your oil changes on a regular basis and all these things. Sometimes things will occur. And if you see that check engine light, we want to make sure you're enabled to be able to figure out what's happening quickly and identify those issues early. And that's what faults reports can do for you. Identifying those issues can then lead you to create work orders for repair. And finally, you're going to have the ability to review the history of any previously reported faults as well and go back further to see if those are regularly recording and you've had previous issues with the same faults or anything along those lines. So I'm going to be able to then demonstrate this in my Geotab going forward. I'm going to configure and run a faults report from within my Geotab and show you an example of how you can do this yourselves. So that being said, I'm going to pop into my database here. And I do have a database. You're more than welcome to follow along. And based on your permissions and your rate plan, we can go ahead and click on maintenance on the left-hand panel. Once I click on maintenance, you're going to see those same aspects we discussed last week for schedules and work orders. But right down underneath, we're going to be able to see faults. When I click on faults, this will open up my faults screen. And based on your experience, you may see the opportunity to enable the new faults experience. I'm currently enabled this with this new beta feature, and you can choose to check out the new faults experience if you do not see this. That looks quite like mine. However, if you are checking out the faults experience and you're not quite thrilled with it for whatever reason, you can always pause this and go back to the previous version. I actually like the new version, and that's what kind of the direction we're going. So I want to focus on the direction we're heading, and I'm going to keep this new faults experience enabled. So once I open this up, it will give me some faults data on my fleet for anything that's being reported for today's date. I do have other associated options at the top to isolate any vehicles in my fleet by groups if you have grouping set up. I can also isolate just specific assets if I need to, or select all of them. There's even an option to include archive data. So if you've removed any vehicles from your fleet, but you still want them to be showing that previous history for reporting, you can keep that there. In this case, it is defaulting for any faults that have been reported today. If I needed to go back historically and say the last month, the last 3 months to kind of see any trending, has this fault occurred previously as well, you can pull this up and see all of that detail if you need to, including custom timeframes. So if I need to open this up further than 3 months, you have those options. In this case, what I find most people to be utilizing is going to be what's happening right now in my fleet. So I'm going to be focused on today's information. Now, if I needed to further isolate this data, you do have the opportunities to choose sources and protocols from this option. And sources are these going to be engine faults coming from the vehicle, or perhaps telematics device faults that are going to be specific to the telematics device, meaning the Go device typically, in the vehicle itself. So depending on what you're looking at, you can look at fault codes that are specific to the Go device, only the vehicle, or both. And if you wanted to get even further involved, you can isolate particular protocols. If I'm dealing with heavy trucks, maybe I only want to see J1708 or J1939, or perhaps light duty OBD2. So in this case, we have a lot of different options to sort through, but oftentimes you may just want to see any faults occurring in your fleet, whether it's the Go device, the vehicle faults, or in this case, both. So here, you also have additional filters that you can utilize off to the side. Status, active, pending, show dismissed faults if you've ever dismissed any faults previously, and apply that. But in this case, I wanted to highlight some of the ways you can tweak the experience to hone in on exactly what you're looking for. And in this case, I want to see any faults in my fleet, period. So I'm going to be able to now review those. I do have many different faults according to what I'm seeing on my page, and I can isolate by asset if I need to. So if I can see that HD6, in this case, my truck HD6 in my fleet, has multiple faults, I can see the fault codes that are appearing here. And if I ever need to see the description of any of these faults, I will be able to see these, and I can highlight over that for more information. I can also click on any of these lines, and it will give me additional information off to the side. That may include effect on component, recommended actions, and the fault details. I can see how many times it was logged and the time date stamp for each one. This is especially helpful if you are doing expanded search based on the last 3 months or anything like that, to see all of the different times these were logged, asset details, and more. So just be aware, there's a lot of information at your disposal here. And I think the most key aspect here is understanding possible severities. You can sort by severity as well. I usually sort high to low. And here I can understand that this one is coded as a high severity. What does this mean? It's stating to check at next halt. In this case, I may want to make sure that I'm checking on this. This is code 651. It's an engine injector cylinder 01. Mechanical system not responding or out of adjustment. I'm not a technician, but this sounds like it may be something important, and I need to take a look at this. I also have other codes here, and some of these may be higher level that I need to take action on immediately, and some of these may be a little bit lower level. I can contact the driver in this case and say, hey, looks like your tire pressure is getting a little low on your tires. Maybe you need to go ahead and check that and fill your tires. So you have a lot of different aspects. Make sure you're looking at these accordingly, and I wanted to make sure you understood how to run a faults report. Now, in this case, I'm looking at the reported information on my screen, but if you ever need to pull that data out of MyGeotab and into a report, you can click on the reports button at the top of the page. And here you're going to have options for either summarized reports or detailed reports. And based off of any of this information, you can choose the standard meat and potatoes version, or an advanced version gives you even more data. And this one is more akin to active engine faults. So you can always pull data out of the system into Excel, or you can click on the 3 dots to the right and also download this as a PDF. So you have a lot of information available to you however you want to digest that. So that being said, I think we've covered how to run a faults report, how to see that data, all the information that's providing to you, and I hope you find this valuable to ensure that you're reacting quickly to any reported faults as the day goes by. Now, going back into the slide deck, we have configured and run a faults report in MyGeotab. Now I want to pivot and talk about some of the new updates we've made to the asset page, specifically under our maintenance tab. There is additional information available to you per asset where you can see any immediate necessary actions. We will be providing certain levels of diagnostics, could be different from one vehicle to the next depending on what we're pulling. But there's also new sections for maintenance overview, fault summaries, and asset inspection information if you're running your asset inspections. So in this case, I want to make sure that I'm pulling all of this across for you and demonstrating this in my Geotab. So we're going to talk about this again back in my database. So here in the database, we've talked about running a faults report under maintenance. Now I'm going to move up to the assets page here at the top of the screen on the left-hand side. And I'm going to isolate any information for my vehicles. If I wanted to hone in on HD6, for instance, this is where I can look specifically to any vehicle. In the previous example, I gave you access to run a faults report based on the fact that you wanted to check ahead of time to see if your vehicles were reporting any faults. That's especially helpful because now you're not reliant on drivers calling you up to tell you that a check engine light came on or any of those things. But in this case, maybe a driver did call you and stated, hey, I'm driving HD6 and the check engine light came on. Can you check on that? Sure. You can go straight to the assets page, click on the maintenance tab, And it will show if anything is currently reporting that may need attention. In this case, I do have a severe fault that is showing here, and I would be able to pull this up right here and take me directly to the faults page to list any of those faults specifically for this vehicle. And now I can understand what may be happening and direct my driver if they need to pull over, take it to a service technician, or we'll check it when it goes back based on the type of information that's presented. Now, going back to this page, you're not just stuck with just fault information on here. There's a lot of additional information that can prove useful. Here, not only will I see immediate actions at the top, I will see asset health information down below, including those diagnostics I was speaking to. Here we see odometer information, engine hours, my electrical system rating or ESR. I'll see fuel level, possibly DEF level if this is a diesel truck. I'm seeing coolant information, coolant temp, possibly oil pressure, and maybe even more depending on the information we are presented for this particular vehicle. Lots of information here in the diagnostics you can glean right here on the assets record. Off to the right, you will also see your fault summaries. Here it's giving me any ongoing faults or severe faults over the last 7 days. You can view all of these and go to the fault screen. Down below, you may also see a maintenance overview section that shows you any work requests that are currently open, severe, pending, the last completed work orders, any closed work orders, assigned schedules, and if you're recording costs, as we discussed in last week's session, you would be able to see the total cost association for each vehicle right here for the last 12 months. So this does give you some insight as to how your vehicles are running and also what type of costs are associated for any of those maintenance events. And then finally, down below, you are going to see information for your last asset inspection. Right now, there are no defects recorded for this. So a lot of valuable information has been added to this asset screen under the maintenance tab. I hope you see a lot of value in this, and this can help you direct your focus onto any particular asset whenever needed. And you can go from one asset to the next directly from your asset screen as you see fit. Now, one last thing is, if any work does need to be done, by going into that asset tab, we've also added some direct action to create work orders directly from this page. So you do not have to move off of this page to create a work order. You can create a work order directly off of this page now if you notice there are any issues that would require your immediate attention. So I wanted to make sure you've seen this. We're trying to make this easier for you and include less steps. And I think this is a big bonus for you. Now, we've talked about doing everything that we can from this page, but I want to be able to pivot back into the slide deck now. Now that we've demonstrated all the information in that, I want to talk about how you can record that unscheduled work. So in the next piece, I want to talk about how you can create pending requests or work orders and create new jobs from any associated defects list that you may have in the system or have created. So in this case, we're going to go back into the database in just a moment. And we're actually going to create a new work order in MyGeotab, and I'm going to show you how to add any associated jobs from any defects list for any work that needs to be accomplished. Now, last week we did talk about how to move that through the work order management process through any of your schedules. But this week, we're talking about those other aspects that maybe we couldn't foresee, anything that's unscheduled. So in this case, we're going to go about this a little differently than we did last week, and I hope you understand how you can now record these events as well. So going back into my database, well, if I was on this work order for this particular vehicle, great. I could create a work order right from here, and it'll take me into the work order screen to create a work order for this particular asset. I'm also going to show you how to do it outside of this page. So going back into the maintenance section, I'm going to click on maintenance. I'm going to then go into work order management. This isn't a scheduled event, so I'm not going to click on schedules. I'm going to go into work order management, and I will see all of my scheduled aspects that are occurring in my request section. I'm seeing things like registration tags and things like that. If you needed to create a new work request to be added into here, you could. So in the case that you want it to show up in here for work that needs to be performed, but you're not ready to bring it into the shop yet, you could create a work request and say which vehicle needs to have a request added. In this case, maybe it's that truck HD6. From here, you would have to state what the defect is that you're going to be bringing it through, and you're going to have to associate any of your created defects lists that are available to you in the system. Associate a defect. You can add the severity, a due date, service due in miles, engine hours, and other descriptors, and add that into the request. Now, in that case, if it's added into the request, you would then have to choose that request and then create a work order to move that through. If you know that this vehicle is ready to be worked on now and you don't want to chart that path and you just wanted to skip this and create a work order, you do not have to create a work request first. You can skip this and just go straight into the orders section and simply just say, I'm going to create a work order. So under work orders, it is going to pull up any of your work orders that are already in the system. It's going to show anything that's been completed, open. You can sort by groups, asset, and status. I'm not worried about looking at any of the work orders that are already here at this point. What I want to do is I want to create a brand new one. So I'm going to go into the work order section here where it says the plus. And I'm going to be able to say plus work order, and I can either create my own or I can do an import. If you wanted to import a whole mess of work orders at once, especially for any previous history, you could do that, and you would be able to download a template file, and you would be able to associate your work orders in bulk. This is oftentimes when you have a brand new database and you're adding a bunch of previous history into the system for work that's already been created. I did want to show this off because it does have value to you to be able to add those previous existing work orders. But in this case, I have an instance where maybe I have a truck that has a flat tire. And we're going to use this example. I have a flat tire, truck came in, they are running on a spare, and now they have that other tire that needs to be either repaired or replaced. So I will go ahead and skip that work request section, go into the work order, and create a brand new one where it says create your own. At this point, it's saying which asset needs work on it. So you're going to choose the asset. In this case, I'm going to utilize truck 1. If there are any open work orders already in the system, you can go to a pre-existing work order that's still open and move through the process and simply be able to move through the current work order. But if you wanted to create a brand new work order, you also have that ability to just simply click create. So in this case, I'm going to click create, and I'm creating a brand new work order for truck 1. So the work order may have multiple jobs available to you. When you create a work order, you may have the ability to not only bring it in for one event for work, but oftentimes when you bring a vehicle in for service, it may need additional work. So I brought it in for a flat tire, but they also realized it needed an alignment and things like that. So each and every job that's associated can be added into the system under a single invoice or work order. Keep that in mind. And I'm going to show you how you can do all of that here in this section. So first thing you're going to see is this has been associated with a reference number. You can change that reference number, but it does state I opened this today at this time. This is truck 1. This is my reference number that I can change and overwrite. If I needed to add those other aspects that we discussed last week, like picking a due date, the completion date. Once it's completed, you would say when it was completed and then verify your odometer readings, engine hour readings, or anything else that's applicable. When you first open a brand new work order, it's going to give you a status is open, but if you never need to change anything and say this is going to be assigned to a technician, change the prioritization, maybe this is the boss's truck, so I'm making this a critical issue. The assigned to is going to be the technicians or any users in your system that you can say, well, who's going to be working on this? In this case, I'm going to have Cecilia work on this vehicle and repair this tire. If you need to add repair sites, you can choose from zones, reason for repair, and finally, repair class. Now, I don't know about you, but if I got a flat tire, that probably wasn't scheduled, so I may choose this to be unscheduled or even emergency. I'm going to choose unscheduled in this case, and now it's going to ask me to add any jobs. In this case, I brought this in here for something that was unscheduled. So adding anything pending, while I can do so, this is going to take anything into the system that was in the request section that's work that needs to be done in the future. It can be performed right now, and maybe while it's here, I would do a tire rotation, but I don't need to do the oil change yet, and it's not due for the registration. So I'm going to delete those from the list. It doesn't delete your job out of the system. When it says a maintenance job will be permanently deleted and not recoverable, it means from this work order. It'll be back in your request section, so don't freak out about deleting it here. I'm going to remove all of these in this case because I don't need to do a alignment, but that's how easy it would be to keep those. And then finally, if you need to add anything because there's no work set to be performed in the job section, you can manually add work by clicking the add. And here's where we need to choose the defects list that I'm going to be working off of to associate any work that needs to be done. Now, in my defects list, I have two options currently available to me in my database. Your database may have more or less in this regard, but in this case, I have my standard default vehicles defects list where I would typically see more of my asset inspection information. And in my case, I've created a new defects list, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a bit. But my maintenance list is what I have created to give me the different options that I may present to my technicians or to say what is being worked on for any of my vehicles. In this case, is this to do with brakes? I will see different aspects that I've added into the system for the types of things I may do for brakes. You know, what are the problems with it perhaps, or what am I doing? In this case, would I be replacing brake lines, calipers, drums, shoes, pads, things like that? This isn't about brakes, so I'm not going to choose brakes. I'm going to go through my list and see what are the options available to me that have been added. Is this a coupling device, drivetrain issue, electrical issue? No, this is a tires issue. When I click on tires, I can see insufficient tread, missing, repair tires, replace tires, or tread or sidewall separation. In this case, I'm going to look at the tire. I'm going to see a gash in the sidewall. I'm going to say, well, can't repair that. This is going to be a replacement. When I choose replace tires, that is where I can then click add, and that's going to add the job for any work that's going to be performed on the vehicle. Again, can you add additional jobs? Absolutely. Add as much work into the system for all the different aspects that needs to be performed. In this case, I'm just simply adding a new tire onto here. Down below, you're going to see total costs, and this will be an accumulation of any of the costs that are associated from the maintenance jobs that you're performing. You cannot change the costs here. This is going to be your grand totals for all of the costs that are from each and every individual job. And we're going to show you that in just a moment. Now here I can add my notes and attachments. And again, if you joined last week's session, I'm going to reiterate, you can add up to 10 related maintenance documents per work order that are up to 10 megabytes in size each document. So that's a lot of documentation you can add into the system and be stored on server. Now, if I've made any changes, you do want to make sure you click save before you move into the job and make any changes there. If you do click on the job and you haven't clicked save, it's okay. It's going to tell you, hey, pump the brakes. Any unsaved changes here will be lost if you continue. Are you sure you want to leave the page? Oh no, I've already changed a few options in here. I'm going to cancel that and make sure I hit my save first so it records anything I've added before I click on the jobs record. So now that I'm clicking on the job, this is going to show me that, hey, I have a new job within here. It's been added from the defect report. It's linked to that reference that is going to be the work order. And here in the job, I can still change prioritization per job. If I have multiple jobs, these may not all be high priority. The job status, is this open, assigned, completed, or canceled? If I do complete it, I want to put the start and completed dates. Make sure my odometer readings are correct. From here, I can certainly adjust any other options, including this service work accomplished. You can use associated VMRS system codes. You can add descriptors, and this is where you're going to record your costs. If I say this was a 1 hour job, my labor maybe was 50, and there was no shipping. I had the tire in stock. Parts cost, we'll say that was 300 in this case. And taxes, I'm going to say were 29. So in those cases, it'll give me my grand total of 379 here for the job. Any of the jobs will then accumulate and provide that grand total in the work order record, and you'll see that in just a moment. Now, for each job, I can add additional notes and attachments here, particular to the job, not the work order, and I can still add another 10 related maintenance documents, and each of these can still be 10 megabytes. So not only can I add 10 documents per job, I can add another 10 into the work order. So if I have 5 jobs and one work order that houses all of those, that's 60 documents. You're not going to run out of space, I don't think. I think we've added a lot of opportunities for you to document this fully, and I hope you see the value in this to add what you want to add. But of course, you don't have to add everything. I'm going to save any changes, and when I do, it takes me right back to the work order itself. All of those dollar associations have now populated here, and now the work has been possibly completed. I'm ready to go. I'm verifying my information. If I want to complete this, I can add a completed date, put in the factors involved when this was done. I'm going to say this was on the 6th today, and it will give me a default for midnight. If I wanted to add the time to be more accurate, it's always helpful to be able to state that I did this at, say, 9 a.m., and then it will pull the odometer readings and engine hours from the record, and it can update all of the jobs associated or not, depending on what you need to do. From here, you'll see my job is still open. If I complete this and I mark this as completed, I may still have an open job. I wouldn't want to do that. So I normally don't just click save. What I often do is will click on complete. And when I click on complete, it's going to tell me you are about to mark this work order as completed. This will also mark all remaining open jobs in this work order as completed as well. This action cannot be undone. Are you sure? Absolutely. If I'm completing the work order, I'm probably needing to complete all the jobs underneath that work order as well. So I'm going to say yes. In this case, it will complete my work order, complete on any open jobs that are still remaining, and now all of the work is done, and I basically have a closed invoice for that work order. So in that case, we've shown you how to add all of that information into the system. Now I want to pivot really quick and let you know under the work orders area, you can now sort by group, asset, and status again. I like to use the filters as well. It gives you more options in addition to these here, but I can easily now choose any perhaps completed jobs. For date range today, I can adjust my references, my priorities, anything I need to, click apply, and then I will see there was that critical priority for this particular completed work order. I can always go back into this, and that's how easy it is to find the information through the reporting for all of the information for this particular work order that I just completed. There's my totals, my notes, and of course, any related maintenance documents for the work order. And you can also go into that job now, go back to that and look at all the notes particular to each and every job, as well as any of those related documents. A lot of information is here in the system. You're not locked out. You can go back to it. You can make edits. If you realized, oh, I misrepresented the price, you can always change things as necessary. So that being said, we're going to go back into the slide deck. We have demonstrated how to create a work order in MyGeotab for any unscheduled events, adding those jobs from a defect list. And I think you can see some of the power we have to make sure that we're recording all of this documentation as necessary. So now I want to pivot back to the defects list, and I want to show you how I've created a maintenance-specific defects list to record the jobs. And I want you to be enabled to do the same thing that I've done. So that being said, I'm going to go into my Geotab one more time here to review the asset inspection defects list that you already have possibly available to you, and then create a brand new one that would be more maintenance specific for your needs. You're not limited to only one. You can create as many defects lists as you choose to, but in this case, I want to start off with a big one. You may have different defects lists for different reasons. Just keep that in mind. So going back into the database really quick, I'm going to then move over into your asset inspection area. So on the left-hand panel, again, we're going to go to maintenance. For your defects list, you're going to click on asset inspections. So asset inspections will work off of already associated defects lists if your drivers are doing asset inspections. Here, it is going to prompt me to run an asset inspections report. I'm not here to run a report for any previous asset inspections. I want to talk about defects lists. So in this case, I'm going to ignore this and I'm going to move up to the right-hand side. Here at the top, you are going to see an option to manage your defects list. And when I click on this, I will have associated options for any defects lists that are existing in your database. And in this particular instance, you have a brand new database. You're typically only going to have two. That is going to be your default trailer defects list and your default vehicles defects list. In my particular database, I've created a new one, and that is my maintenance defects list. So my maintenance list here, I've already created. I want to make sure you know how to peruse your defects list and view them. You'll see in my defects list, I've named this as a defects list. I've associated which groups this pertains to. In this case, it's the entire company. And which asset type. Is this specific for vehicles, trailers, or both? If I needed to add any additional information, I could have, and you'll see I've added a lot of information in the system. Some of the defects lists you'll see may already incur some of this information. Like asset inspections, you're going to check brakes, and you're going to see options like air compressor not working, chatters, shutters, leaking air, and things like that. But if you're doing an asset inspection, it doesn't give you an option to replace the brake lines or calipers or drums or do a replacement for pads or shoes. That's something a maintenance tech would do. So in those cases, you'll see I've already added some of these into the brakes section. Same here, I've added a whole new section for drivetrain where you can see I've added a lot of different factors that would be particular to the drivetrain, perhaps coolant leak, DPF filter, EGR valves, engine misfires, and more. A lot of opportunities here for you. There's an electrical section that's been added and other sub options here. And you can move down and you can see I've done a lot of work here to make sure when I'm pulling up a defects list, I have a lot of the options that I know my vehicles will need associations for work that needs to be done. You will be able to make your own as you see fit, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. Now that you've seen what I've got here, I'm going to simply back out of here. I want to show you how to add a defects list, and it's really as simple as clicking the Add button right here at the top. Here, it will let you add a defects list from scratch, and you can start off from scratch as you see fit. Here, you would give it a name, and I'm just going to call this my maintenance list, typically as I've already done. I would give this a new name if I already had one listed as maintenance list, but you get the gist. Under groups, again, who would have who would this maintenance list pertain to if you're using grouping structures in your database. I want this to be open to the entire company group, not just particular asset groups. What is the asset type? Is this for vehicles, trailers, or both? And then you can start adding those parts and defects. And here you would be able to say, I'm going to add a brakes section. So I'm going to add the part. And what about the brakes? Here's where I'd click next to brakes and click on the add. And then I could state what are the aspects that I would need to perform. Maybe replace brake lines. And you would go down and you would add all of those individually for all the different aspects that you may need to perform maintenance for your brakes. Now, in this case, I'm not going to do all that. I'm going to show you another path because I don't always like to reinvent the wheel from scratch. Oftentimes, you may have defects lists in the system that have already done some of the legwork for you. You can utilize some of those as a template and then add or remove aspects as you need to. So I'm going to kick back out of this, and I want you to know how you can create a defects list, a brand new one, off of any associated templates that are available by clicking on the down arrow next to the add. Instead of adding a new defects list from scratch, I'm going to create a defect list from a template. By clicking on there, I'm going to choose my vehicle defects list. And from here, now I'm going to be able to go ahead and therefore give it a new name. I don't want it to be called default vehicle defects list. I'm going to call this new maintenance list. And again, associate the groups. This is going to be for devices, trailers, or both. And I can add those associated parts to anything I need. But at first, I'm going to look at everything that's already there for me. In this case, do I need to add brakes? No, it's already got both parking brakes and service brakes. So is there anything here that I may not want to include? If I wanted to include the information that's already here for slow to release, weak or ineffective, or will not release, I can leave that. Alternatively, I can just say, no, this doesn't pertain to me, and you can delete anything you do not want. But if I need to add additional values to the parking brakes, you can always go ahead and make adjustments here and add anything you need. Replaced line or what have you. Same for your service brakes, coupling devices, emergency equipment. Emergency equipment, in my case, may not pertain whatsoever to this. Fire extinguishers and other associated factors that aren't in the cab that I don't need for spares. If I don't need an entire section, I can remove all of the emergency equipment just like so. And you have those opportunities to adjust this in accordance to whatever your needs are. If I need to add any additional aspects for when I scroll through here, I don't see anything for drivetrain. I think the drivetrain is kind of an important aspect for most of your vehicles out there. So I'm going to go ahead and add a part. So I'm going to give it a name, drivetrain. Add the part. And there, I would add all the associated values. So again, the EGR valves, cool and flush, anything you need to do, you have a lot of aspects you can continue to add and add in all those figures. So now when you bring in a vehicle for service and you add any work to be done, remember, it's going to make you choose from a defects list. Now you'll have all of those options that you've set up in your defects list to choose from. Wanted to make sure you had multiple options in the system for you to tweak what you'll need to have in here. And you can always go back and update your maintenance list as you see fit. So there's a lot of value in the system for you. And I wanted to make sure we were covering a lot of this because I think these are the things that are going to help you be successful in recording all of these events going forward. So that being said, if you've made any changes, do not forget to click save. But in this case, I already have a defects list in my database. I don't need to add another one. I'm just going to show you. Once you did hit save, if you created this, again, it would look more in line for these things. Now you can choose from the key events that you do need to do. Perhaps it's just an engine misfire that you're working on, or engine replacement, or exhaust leak, or oil leak, or thermostat. All of these options are here as you've already dictated. You've added those into the list for the work that you would perform. So that being said, all of that is now here. We've shown you how to manage your defects list and create new ones. Going back into our slide deck, I think you see the value in this. I hope this will help you be more successful moving forward. Now we're going to talk about reports, and specifically automating reports. You can schedule and automatically run reports for requests, work orders, jobs, and faults as you see fit. So going forward, I'm going to demonstrate in my Geotab how easy it is to search maintenance reports, configure a dashboard report, and configure an email report for any type of the maintenance reports that you want to focus on. So again, we're talking about a lot of reactive features, but sometimes we need to be able to report on everything that's been done, whether it's scheduled or reactive. And in those cases, I want to make sure you have the tools available at your disposal. So moving back into my database, just be a moment. There we go. I'm going to be able to go into the maintenance features, and I'm going to show you how to just run an ad hoc report whenever you need to. And we've already actually done this. Under work order management, what am I looking for a report for? Is it for orders or jobs or requests? Maybe I just want to see what requests are currently outstanding and what's high, medium, or low. This is technically running a report, pulling it onto my screen, and if I needed to pull this out of the system at any time, I can simply move that out into Excel or a PDF as I see fit. That's your ad hoc reporting. So if I know every morning I need to go in the system and I need to do this and I need to pull it into Excel, is that really beneficial for me? Or maybe I want to run a faults report for yesterday and see any faults that showed up in the system for any point yesterday. I could go into faults, find that information, look at yesterday's information, and pull that into Excel, and then I could shift this off to any team members that I need to. But again, if I could just automate this to automatically occur, wouldn't that be great? I'm going to show you how easy it is to do so. So in the system, instead of just making you manually click around, I'm going to go into our reporting features down below. So instead of looking at maintenance, I'm going to go down into the reports section and I'm going to click on reports. Under here, you're going to have the three options. I'm going to click on all available reports to search on all the reports that I have available within my database. Some of you will have more reports. Some of you may even have less available to you, but I'm going to show you mostly the standard reports that are already built into the system. You can search for specific reports by name or by type, whether they're dashboard reports, email reports, or downloadable. In this case, I'm going to refresh my screen. Bear with me just a moment. Here, we're going to see I have my top reports already highlighted. Anything with a star is going to show up in your top reports. You can uncheck those and it'll be removed from your top reports. You can also highlight other sections as you see fit or uncheck them as you like, and then you will have a list of all the reports that are available for you under the reports section. If I was looking just specifically for anything that was tagged as a maintenance report, this would be involved in your reports tagging. This has 29 currently. In addition, I could just simply search for maintenance reports by name. So if I was looking for maintenance, I would be able to see anything that is triggered through the maintenance area in this area here. I show my active reports, my inactive reports, and if I was looking for a specific aspect for maintenance, in this case I'm going to choose my faults reports, I can just type in faults especially, and now I will see only my active engine faults or my default engine fault report. Now if I wanted to queue up a report that showed me all my faults that were occurring yesterday or this week or anything like that, I could easily do so by clicking on the three dots here, and I can queue this up. I can either download a template that I'm going to tweak and play with and then upload in the system, or I'm going to keep this simple for today's session. I'm just going to simply queue this up to run as it is and edit the report. Once this pulls up on my screen, the edit functions, it's going to give me information in the General tab where I can choose the categories for any of my reports. This one is already listed under Maintenance. Under Report View, can this show up in the drop-down list under the Maintenance section? Yes, it already does. This is set to yes. You can also remove that if you do not want this to show up in the Maintenance section under the Reports option. But I like it there, so I'm going to leave that to yes. Now for reports, you have two options, either dashboard or emailed reports. I'm going to set up a dashboard and an email report to show you how this works. Under dashboard, I'm going to be able to create a new chart. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. We can always provide additional training to you as needed in the future to talk about reports more in depth. But under my new chart, I can give this a new name or keep the associated name, change the chart description. Who's going to have access to this report? Is the entire company or only associated groups? In this case, I don't want anyone to have access to the report except for myself, but you can also add other associated users if need be. I don't want to bother with anyone with this. This is for my own purposes, so I'm going to be the only person who will be able to see this graphic. Now, under the report data configuration, is this looking for anything reported to the previous hour or today or yesterday or what have you? You can isolate the date range. I'm going to say today's reported false. And how often do I want this to refresh in my reports area on my dashboard? So in this case, I'm going to say, give me a fresh update every 30 minutes to see if anything new has occurred. When do I want this to kick off? Tomorrow or today? I'm going to choose today, starting off at, let's see, 8 a.m. It's already past 8 my time, so we're going to go ahead and just have this continue to refresh every 30 minutes on the hour. Am I looking for only certain groups of data in this? Am I looking only for my heavy trucks or all vehicles? In this case, all vehicles. What's my source? Do I want to show some dismiss faults, telematics faults, vehicle faults? I'm going to choose only vehicle faults, and I can use specific diagnostics if I want to, but in this case, I'm happy with that report. This will now show up on my dashboard, and it'll be updated every 30 minutes with any new faults that are occurring throughout the day. In addition, maybe I want to set up an emailed report. My email options, if I turn these on, will give me options as to, again, display options will state who will receive the email. Now, in this case, as an entire group, specific users, maybe I will need to send this to Cecilia. If their email functions are turned on, they will receive this. Hers isn't, so I'm going to remove her, and I'm just going to say myself. If I wanted to have this set up as a PDF or Excel, I do have both options. And then what are my timeframes for this report? I'm going to say the previous 7 days or maybe last week. I'm going to choose weekly to run this, and I'm going to have this run every Monday. So starting next Monday, I'm going to have this kick off, not at 8:50. I know maybe I come in early, so I'm going to kick this off and have it run at 7 o'clock every Monday. And it's going to repeat all of that information for any of the data I'm looking for. For my faults, in this case, I can do, again, the same faults or particular protocols or anything in those regards. This one will just be vehicle faults again. And now I'll have those reports emailed to me in a cyclical basis every Monday. And I'll also be able to see this on my dashboard right here under the dashboard section once this is saved. And then it will refresh again every 30 minutes. And that's how I have that visualized data to be able to pull this up. There's my new engine faults reports. And I can see any engine faults that are on here. I have multiples because these are training databases, and you can see I've already got these set up. But that's how easy it is to do. I'm going to hide this one and just focus on the other one, or vice versa. And that's how you can utilize these reports as you need to. And again, I'm going to look for that on Monday at 7 a.m. So just remember, you can pull reports on anything related to maintenance. So going back, I'm going to go into the report section, all available reports. If you wanted to pull reports for any upcoming requests due today, you can simply search for your requests, your work orders, In this case, I would just state orders or perhaps even your jobs. And you can come up with your reports for totals for the work that's been completed this week, anything that's coming due. You can run these cyclically and queue these up to refresh either on your dashboard in a more common fashion or maybe your week totals for your jobs to see what your cost associations. We want to give you the power to run the reports in whatever fashion you want, producing the data that'll help you be more efficient. So in those cases, we have search maintenance reports. We've configured a dashboard report and configured an email report. It's that easy to do. It's that easy to set up. We hope you found a lot of value in all of this. And to recap everything we've discussed today, we've talked about understanding our fault reports, our new updates to the maintenance features within the asset record. We've discussed recording unplanned maintenance events, and that also included defining your maintenance defects lists. And as we just discussed, running those maintenance reports, oftentimes in an automatic cyclical fashion. That being said, we've discussed a lot again today, and please make sure you have access to the recordings of this week's session and last so you can refresh yourself on anything we've discussed and utilize this to be more efficient in your databases. These are the resources that have been provided to you and will also be provided to you in the future for our Work Order Management User Guide and our Geotab Academy courses for Maintenance 101. I want to just go ahead and open this up for Q&A with the last couple minutes we have left.
Thank you, Curtis. That was just like last week, a great session, jam-packed with information. We had lots of questions. I appreciate all the questions that came in. And there are lots of questions about the recording or things we covered. The recording, like Curtis said, it's all recorded. We'll send it out. His slide deck that he shared during it, it'll be sent out. Last week's recording, I hope all of you got it. If you didn't get it, just ask again, or come to the community and ask, where do I find these if you can't find them, and we'll point you towards all the recordings. Most of the questions that were asked, I did answer here, so I think we're good on live Q&A. I know there's still some outstanding questions. I know some of you had some tough questions about some API integrations and things like that. We'll follow up with answers to all these questions. And if you asked questions last week and are looking like, where was my answer from? There was a document that was sent out that contains all those answers that we didn't get a chance to answer last week. We'll do the same for this week. If you're still looking for those, can't find them, feel free to come to the community and ask any questions you have in the community or go through your normal support channels. We're always happy to help. And these sessions, we're done with maintenance, but next week we will have another training session. So if you've been enjoying these, mark your calendar at this time every Wednesday. We'll be back next week with another session with our team. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, everybody, for staying all the way to the end, and have a great rest of your day.